Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum pa khair narle. It's me Atif Waqas and I welcome you in the third lecture of entry test preparation. In this lecture we are going to discuss about electric flux, Gauss law, electric potential, gradient of electric potential and then work energy theorem in this context. But before discussing these things, let me recall what we discussed in our previous lecture. In our previous lecture we discussed calculating electric field intensity because of several point charges. And there we use superposition principle. I told you that we would add the electric field intensity because of individual charges at the point where we want to calculate electric field intensity. So now in this lecture we are going to discuss the continuous charge distributions and to calculate electric field intensity because of some continuous charge distribution we use Gauss law. But before understanding Gauss law, you need to have knowledge of electric flux. So what is electric flux? Electric flux is just the number of electric field lines passing through an area. And you know, area is a vector and the direction of area is usually taken normal to the plane. So I represent it with some unit vector n, and sometimes the direction of area is taken with the plane of that area. So this may be the plane of that area. It may be in either direction. But we can either have plane of area or normal of the area. So in electric flux formula, electric flux can be mathematically represented by just dot product of electric field lines and the area vector. Here this area vector is the vector having direction normal to the plane. So then we know that dot product can further be simplified as EA cos theta. So flux is a scalar quantity. Its unit is Newton meter square per coulomb. Units of electric flux are the unit of electric field is Newton per coulomb and multiplied with the units of meter that are meter square. Or we can also have the units of electric flux is volt meter, because electric field intensity can be expressed as volt per meter, and if you multiply this with the square of meters we get volt meter. So these are the units of electric flux, and then you can also express the same electric flux by this formula, EA sine of alpha. Alpha is now the angle between the plane and the electric flux, electric field lines, because this theta is the angle between electric field intensity and normal of the plane, and this alpha is the angle between electric field lines and plane of that area. So this way we can express the electric flux mathematically, and flux is maximum when theta is 0 and alpha is 90 degree. So flux is maximum when normal of the area is parallel to field lines. And this alpha equals to 90 means plane of the area is perpendicular to the field lines. So you can use either of the two formulas. So in this case when both represent the same situation. If theta is 0, alpha is 90. Why? That is because normal is perpendicular to the plane. So normal and plane itself are perpendicular to each other. So you can either of the two. And then we move to some other situations. Let me give you an example from some past papers. And there was a question that what is the change in the orientation of the area if flux through it becomes half of the maximum? So let me erase this stuff, and I'll use this formula. What is the question? The question is, what is the change in the orientation of a plane inside a uniform electric field if electric flux through the plane reduces to half of its initial maximum value. So here they ask, what is the change in the orientation of a plane inside a uniform electric field? So they are asking about change in the orientation. Let me use this formula, and then delta theta is the change in the angle of that plane to the field lines. So delta theta, they ask about delta theta. What is given? Given is that electric flux through the plane reduces to half of its initial maximum value. So initially the flux was maximum, and for maximum we know that theta is 0. So theta initial EA cos of 0 degree, and that is EA because cos of 0 is 1. Then what happened to the theta? So theta initial is 0 because flux was maximum, and then they change the situation and flux become one by 2 EA, half of its initial value. Initial value is EA. So what is theta, for which we are having cos of that theta to be 1 by 2. So cos of theta is 1 by 2, and now theta final is cos inverse of 1 by 2. And from here you know that it is 60 degree, and if you are having theta initial, you are having theta final, that you can calculate the change in the angle, and that is theta final minus theta initial. So the change in the orientation is 60 degree. And similar questions may be asked in the exam. So now we move to the next concept, and the next concept is Gauss law. But let me give you another point about electric flux, that electric flux is 0 when theta is 90 degree, means normal is perpendicular to the field lines, and alpha is 0 mean plane is parallel to the field lines, and then you would be having electric flux to be 0. And in Gauss law we use the same concept of electric flux, but we use this concept to calculate electric field intensities. What is Gauss law? The statement of Gauss law is total electric flux because of some point charge having magnitude q is q divided by permittivity of free space. If it is placed in free space, then it would be q divided by epsilon naught, and if it is placed in some material media, then it may be q by epsilon naught times epsilon r. This epsilon r is relative permittivity of that medium, and Gauss law can be used to calculate electric field intensity because of continuous charge distributions, and we can use Gauss law for calculating electric field intensity due to point charge, due to line of charges, due to sheet of charges, due to sphere of charges, between two sheets of charges, and many different situations. So it's a general law, and we do not need to derive it mathematically, and we do not need to discuss all those formulas that involve in different cases, but few things are important for your exams, and that is electric field intensity because of sheet of charges, which we can derive from using Gauss law. But before that, let me define some quantities. The density of charges, so it may be linear charge density if charge is if charge is distributed along a line, then we use linear charge density, and that can be represented by lambda, and it is q divided by L, having units of coulombs per meter. And then we are having surface charge density, which is represented by this small sigma, and that is charge per unit area, so coulomb per meter square. And then there is volumetric volume charge density in case of having some charges sphere like a nucleus of an atom. So there we are having three-dimensional distribution of charges. So for that case, you would be having volume charge density. Volume charge density is represented by rho, that is q divided by v, coulombs per meter cube. And then for sheet of charges, Gauss law gives that electric field intensity is sigma divided by epsilon naught, and it is half sigma by epsilon naught for single sheet of charges. And if we are having two oppositely charged sheets, then we would simply multiply it by 2, because two oppositely charged plates support the fields of each other. Inside those plates, the fields are added because they are in same direction. From positive they are outward, for negative they are inward, so we add those two, and that's why we are having sigma by epsilon naught for two oppositely charged sheets. And one thing here which I would like to discuss is that whenever you apply Gauss law, you assume some Gaussian surface. You assume Gaussian surface because electric field intensity obey inverse square law. So you would be having some sheet to cover that region, and for that case we always use Gaussian surface. It may be of any shape. You can use any closed surface. In case of closed surfaces, the flux is different than in case of a plane surface. That is because in closed surface there is not a single normal. In case of a plane, there is a single normal to that plane. What is the situation when we would be having some closed surface? And that is, let's suppose, as I told you, we always use some Gaussian surface to solve the problems in Gauss law, using Gauss law. So what we do? If you are having some closed surface, by closed surface I mean any surface that is having normals more than one. Any surface, any closed surface, it may be a cube, it may be a sphere, it may be of any shape, like a balloon. So a closed surface has more normals. And like in case of a sphere, it is having normal in this direction, in outward direction, radially outward. So a sphere have many radii, so it may have many directions for their normals. So in that case, if you place some positive charge inside a closed surface, whether it is a sphere or any shape, it would be having some positive flux outward. Why? That is because the normal and the field lines would be in same direction, and the flux would be EA cos of 0. Flux would be positive because cos of 0 is 1. But in case of some negative charge, if you place some negative charge inside the same sphere, then we would be having field lines that would enter that closed surface, and in that case the flux would be negative. Why negative? That is because normal of the area is now anti-parallel to the field lines, and in that case you would be having EA cos of 180, and cos of 180 is -1, so we would be having negative flux, maximum flux but negative. And what would happen if we place both of these charges inside a same single sphere like this? I'm having some spherical surface, and in this surface I place a dipole. A dipole is just a system having two opposite charges of same magnitude. So if I place it here, what would happen? According to Gauss, that it's very easy to calculate electric flux to that surface without having any mathematics. In that case, you see that both negative or positive charges are there inside that surface. So the total charge is 0. As I told you in our previous lecture, that charges can have property, additive property. You can add them algebraically and they can get 0 value. So in this case, the total flux is 0. Why 0? Because the field lines coming out of that sphere are equal to the field lines that are entering to that spherical surface. Why? Because charges are of same magnitude but opposite direction, but opposite sign. So this way, if you place any dipole inside a closed surface, the total flux is 0. And then we move to electric potential. We discussed electric potential in our previous lecture a bit, but once again, if I recall, here I'm having some positive source charge, and here at this point I want to calculate electric potential because of this source charge. So its mathematical form is 1 divided by 4 pi epsilon naught if I assume it to be in the free space, and this is q divided by r. It only depends upon the magnitude of this charge, it depends upon the separation from of this point from the source. So I mean r. So it depends upon these two things, and it depends upon the media where the charges are placed. So in this case the medium is a free space, so I put here epsilon naught. In case of any other medium you would put epsilon naught times epsilon r, q divided by r. And in case of two oppositely charged charges, like here I'm having some negative source charge, and I want to calculate electric potential because of these two. So what would I do? I would take an algebraic sum. How? That is V1 is the potential because of this charge. Let me call this one is V1 R1, and V2 is the potential because of the other charge, and that is 1 divided by 4 pi epsilon naught minus q divided by R2. If resistances are same, then I can write this way, and if I add them, what would I get? 0. So the total potential at this point because of these two charges is 0. Why 0? Because we would have algebraic sum. This is some positive potential, this is negative potential, add and we get 0. Remember, dear students, potentials are not vectors, but whenever we would be adding them, they would be added algebraically. Why algebraically? Because charges obey the additive property, and we always add them algebraically because they may be positive, they may be negative. So electric potential, because of two oppositely charged particles having same magnitude of charge, right in the middle is 0. So now we go to the situation when we would be having some unit positive charge, and in the surroundings of that positive charge I mark points that are at same distance from that source, and I end up in a circle with some radius, that is r, and if I calculate electric potential at all those points that are at distance r from the charge q, I would get same result. Why same result? That is because potential only depends upon the source charge and the position with respect to that source charge, separation from that source charge, and upon the medium. I assume free space, so at all these points the potential is same. What is the potential at this point here? For that I would need what? I would need the distance of that point, and that is R2. And similarly, I draw another circle of radius R2. So there I would be having some different potential. Why? That is because R is different for that. And if I'm having two different potentials, then I have potential difference. And that potential difference have different meanings. If I place some positive test charge here, now this time it is a test charge, Q0, what would happen? This positive source charge would repel this to this direction. And then we can define that to move this from here to here, there is a work, and that work is done by this electrostatic force. Now the work done by this charge on this charge in moving it from here to here can be written as the product of charge multiplied with potential difference. That is the work done. This work done is then equal to change in kinetic energy, and the same work done is equal to negative change in potential energy. And there is another thing about this difference in potential, that electric field is a negative gradient of potential. This is very important to know. Here you would be having electric field in this direction. Why? That is because there is difference in the potential of these 2 points. There is always electric field in the 2 points having different potential. So these 2 points have different potential, that is why there is electric field. We derive this expression too at the end, but let me first discuss the work energy theorem in this case. This is very important, and from here you can see that electric field has units of volts per meter. And this work energy principle, you know, work energy theorem, that whenever you would be having some system that is conservative, and when we do work against that conservative system, its potential energy increase. So increase in potential is in the case when one work is against the field, and it is increase in kinetic energy if the work done is along that field. So let me take a situation of some unit positive charge that is having potential along this axis, and I place some test positive charge here, and then this positive charge is having zero velocity initially. So what would happen? This positive charge would start moving in this direction, it would get some kinetic energy. So the work done by this positive charge and this test charge is equal to change in the kinetic energy. So work done is increase in kinetic energy if this work done is done by the source charge, by the system, it increases the kinetic energy. But if I move the charge in this direction, what would happen? Now this time I am doing work, the system is not doing work in this case, I am doing work on it, and this work would increase its potential energy. There is increase in potential energy. But this work is negative for that positive source because it is against the field lines. So the work that is done by the system increases the potential energy. The work that is done on the system increases the potential energy. The work that is done by the system increases the kinetic energy, and the work that is done on the system increases the potential energy. So this is how we can relate the potential and the potential energy. So final expression may be delta U is Q delta V. This is very important expression. This delta V have units of volts. Delta V has units of volts, and this delta U has units of joules. And you know that at atomic level we use electron volts, that is charge on elementary charge, volt is voltage, and we use this as unit of energy. So 1 electron volt is 1.6 into 10 raised to minus 19 coulomb volt, and coulomb volt is joule. So 1.6 into 10 raised to minus 19 joule is 1 electron volt. We would continue these things, but it's enough for today. Stay blessed, stay happy. Allah Hafiz.